All right, we're going to start a couple minutes early today. You are listening to North of Normal with Amanda McKeen. You're tuned in to WZNC LP Bethlehem, North Country Community Radio, 99.9 FM. We're streaming online at nococommunityradio.org. And like I said, you're listening to North of Normal. I'm Amanda McKeen. We're on every Tuesday from 10 to noon. And every Tuesday from 10 to 11, I have a very special guest on, and we have unscripted chats. And I am going to read this week's introduction, which is breaking my unscripted rule. But as I read it, you'll understand why. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome and thank you for listening. North of Normal isn't your typical talk show. It isn't about selling something. It's about being human and celebrating the people in our community. Every week I sit down for real conversations with the people who make the North Country what it is. Neighbors, leaders, helpers, and quiet doers who show up for their communities in ways big and small. Usually the show is 100% unscripted. I don't have notes. I don't have a plan. There's just two people in front of a mic. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm reading this introduction because our guest has done so much for the North Country that I didn't want to risk leaving anything important out. So today, North of Normal is 99% unscripted. Allan Clark is the kind of person whose name doesn't just appear on rosters. It shows up in stories. Stories about change, about resilience and rescue, and someone stepping in when things get hard. He's served as the fire chief for the town of Sugar Hill for over 22 years. He's still an active ski patroller at Cannon Mountain and the building official in Easton. And he holds leadership roles that ripple far beyond one town. He's chair of the New Hampshire Board of Fire Control. He's commissioner on the New Hampshire Fire Standards and Training Commission, both of which are governor-appointed roles. He's also president of the Twin State Fire Mutual Aid Association, a director with the New Hampshire Outdoor Council, and a founding board member of the Franconia Notch Ski Patrol Association. And one of the things that stands out most, Allan helped found PEMI Search and Rescue and served as its president for 20 years. Today, he's still an active field member helping bring people home when they're lost or in trouble out in the mountains. He also owns and manages several active companies, including Frozen Pond Consulting, Sugar Hill Realty Holdings, and Maple Ridge Homes, to name a few. It's a long list and an impressive one. But today's conversation isn't just about what Allan does. It's about who he is, what has shaped him, what keeps him grounded, and why, after all these years, he's still showing up. Allan, welcome to North of Normal.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Yeah. So, Allan, you and I kind of got a head start before everybody tuned in. We were talking about the importance of communication and how communication has been changing over the last few years.
Well, it certainly has, and you know, I'm getting old. I'm 72 years old, so we were talking about how communicating is difficult at best, and how over the years how people receive their information has changed significantly. And how the different generations receive their communications different than, say, my generation. And so that is a challenge. It's a challenge with any organization, but organizations like PEMI, which is multi-generational, and there's 85 active members, trying to communicate effectively with all of them is a bit of a challenge, or at least it is for me.
Yeah, I think with all of the roles and the hats that you wear, I'm sure that communication is the fundamental piece that enables you to be effective in each one of those roles.
It is, and of course, with each organization, I think it has its own challenges. Fire's a little different because it's somewhat paramilitary, so there is a defined organization there's defined ranks, and there's a chain of command. So there is a framework for us to work with, although, communicating still is a bit of a challenge, and in trying to get a message across at an emergency can be critical.
Yeah.
But it also relates to, how do you make an organizational effective? And, fortunately, I've had some great teachers during my life, my father probably being the primary one, but, people wonder how does, so my fire department has 21 active members in a town of 660, and how do you do that? And I think a lot of it is just kind of following the golden rule. Certainly we have our ranks when it relates to an emergency, but during other times, you need to teach people the way you would like to be taught. You need to treat people the way you would like to be treated. And so, most of my firefighters in Sugar Hill have been with me, maybe not for 20 years, but some have been there longer. But they, for the most part, they stay. And then after a meeting and then after a training, a lot of times they don't leave. I mean, they just enjoy dealing with each other.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just happen. That happens because you need to kind of set a tone. I was fortunate when I became chief that, the prior chief had had the basics down, and that, everybody just kind of got along with each other, and we didn't have divisive groups or anything, and so I inherited that and then was able to build upon it. But, again, it comes back just to being able to understand what other people's needs are and to be able to communicate effectively.
Yeah, that's really special. I noticed you mentioned your dad, and one of my big questions was to find out who had the most influence on you to develop the legacy that you have today.
I guess it was, my father, who was a blue-collar worker, worked very hard, was very family-oriented, didn't do a lot of community involvement, but certainly was there. Church was important to him. Probably his work ethic is probably more of what shaped me than anything. I think the rest of my background just developed with no one individual. It was just, I was fortunate to be either working with or participating with others, and was able to glean from them the good things and kind of discard what I thought maybe I didn't need to know or shouldn't know. So, yeah.
Where are you actually from, Allan?
So I grew. Well, I was born in Lowell, Mass, and lived in North Chelmsford, Mass, which is just south of Nashua.
Yeah.
But from the age of 11, I was a Boy Scout and went to Boy Scout camp. And then when I was age 14, I became part of the staff. And then when I got my driver's license at 16, I spent all my time at any free time I had at the Boy Scout camp. So I really grew up in New Hampshire, even though I was born, and my home was in Chelmsford, Mass.
So where was the Boy Scout camp?
Boy Scout camp was in Northwood, New Hampshire, so which was about a 60-mile drive from where I live. So I got heavily involved in the facilities and spent a lot of my time and learned a lot of skills doing manual labor just to keep the Scout camp up and running. Less with the programming part of it.
Yeah, and I think you're still involved in some kind of camp.
I am. So I'm chairman of what's known as, it's a corporation known as Trustees of Camp Carpenter. That's a company that owns 300 acres of land in Manchester.
Okay.
On a lake. Hard to believe it's in Manchester. That was a Boy Scout camp for years. and then, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, switched over to be a Cub Scout camp.
What's the difference? Sorry, I don't know.
No, the difference would be age.
Okay.
So I think when you become 11, you would transfer over to be a Boy Scout until you were about 18 or 17, where a Cub Scout would be they start young now, but up to 11.
Okay.
So the Cub Scout camp's a little different than the Boy Scout camp because there's the ratio of adults to the boys, and now it includes girls, is close to like 2 to 1, or very, whereas with the boys, the older boys, it might be 1 to 10 or something. So we're fortunate we have that facility. We're not part of the Boy Scouts. We're separate and distinct. That was set up back in the 30s when the Manchester Mills went bankrupt, and the founders of this camp wanted to make certain that if the operating entity, which is the Boy Scouts, ever got themselves in trouble, that they wouldn't lose the assets, because they saw what happened to the mills. So we're separate and distinct. But our goal is to provide, camping experiences for youth, and which right now is through the Boy Scouts.
Nice. So how the heck did you end up here in Sugar Hill?
So, well, that's a good question. It started because I learned to ski late, at around age 35, and somehow ended up skiing Cannon. And would come up whenever I could. We rented a cottage. My boys were skiers. My boys were skiers prior to me, so that's why at a late age I'm like, well, if I'm going to be active with my boys, I got to learn to ski. So I did. And then when the youngest went to college, I was in a position where, as long as I had good internet, I could be any place.
Yep.
So the opportunity came to go to Sugar Hill. I could have lived a lot of different places, but Sugar Hill is a very unique community, and with a strong sense of community, and in some ways somewhat old-fashioned. So it just seemed like a good fit. Where I live had excellent internet, and so I was able to establish an office in my home. My wife worked at Elliott Hospital, and she was able to transfer up to Littleton Hospital, so the transition was fairly easy. But it was just this desire, I guess, for the outdoors and be out of the city. I lived right in Manchester, up in the north end of Manchester, and it just seemed like it was a great opportunity to settle into a community where we could age and also be part of the community. Yeah.
So help me understand how that transition went when you did move to Sugar Hill. How did you get integrated? How did you develop trust with your community? What did that look like?
Yeah, so somewhere along the line, either probably just prior to us moving, I was lucky enough to be allowed to become a patroller at Cannon, which at the time was you needed to be accepted by them. You just didn't walk through the door. Mm-hmm. And so I had worked on my medical background, and then I joined what was the Franconia Life Squad, and then back then that the Life Squad served Easton, Sugar Hill, and Franconia. Because I worked out of my house, I was available during the day for a lot of the calls, and so you got to know people kind of one call at a time. At the same time, I joined the fire department with no. I had been in the fire service before.
Yeah, in your 20s, right?
Yeah, I was a deputy. When I left Northwood, I was the deputy fire chief.
Okay.
And when I moved to Manchester, I still kept somewhat active in the fire service, but I didn't belong to a department or anything. So I knew Sugar Hill had a fire department, and I had some skills that I thought, but the intent was just to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
And help when I could, and the same with the life squad. Shortly, like after being there probably less than a year, the current chief said that he was going to retire because he spent too much time in Maine and didn't feel that it was appropriate. And he approached me and said, the guys would like you to be their chief. And I'm like, geez,
wow, that was fast.
I've only been here a short time. And he said, well, it's obvious, that you have experience and you have knowledge, you have leadership skills, and they would like you to be the chief. And so I became the chief, and then we worked really hard. We trained an awful lot. They all stuck by me. We made some changes. One of the first thing when I joined was the beer had to come out of the refrigerator. We're not having beer at the station.
Whoa!
I was afraid I might lose all my members, and not only did the beer come out, but they all signed an alcohol policy, which is now town policy, that says, if you've been drinking, don't go to a call.
Yeah.
And again, that was they kind of all understood it. Times were changing, so it wasn't maybe that as big of a deal as some might thought. But the tradition certainly in years prior to that was after a meeting they would all hang out and drink beer.
Yep. Now
they all hang out and drink water, it seems like. So it's just part of a normal change. And then just, being active. And, it's funny, but you get to know people, one call at a time, because in their times of need, you would show up and make a positive difference. And so you learned, people through that process. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, and still to this day, there are a lot of people that know who I am that I don't necessarily know their name. Usually once we start talking a little bit about, I can understand where they're coming from. But showing up at somebody's house at 2 a.m. when they're having a severe medical emergency and they may be the spouse or whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, they know me, but that doesn't mean that I necessarily will know them.
Right.
So, and then kind of through that process, and as I taught my firefighters, and we've had female firefighters in the past. We have one right now that's kind of my assistant.
Okay.
She doesn't go on the scene, but she helps with training, everything other than going into a burning building. But what we learn is that, especially on a medical emergency, the most important thing we do is show up. And all of a sudden, us showing up on the scene turns what was chaos into all of a sudden calm.
Yeah.
And they think more of us than probably what we are. They think
you're heroes.
We're the doctor, or it's like no, we're just people trying to help.
Yeah.
But trying to convey that to people of when we respond, even it's 2 a.m, they come in uniform. You don't come with dirty overalls or
right.
something on, and you treat everybody with respect, and you just you deal with the emergency. And so when you do that, word gets around, and
yes.
and so that's how I think I've become. In my town, I think I don't know everybody, but
they know you.
They probably know me.
They do.
And I know an awful lot of them, which is a big advantage.
Yes.
And disadvantage. So in some ways, a disadvantage. Advantage because you know them, you probably know something about their background or who they work or their family. The hard part is, in my job, and especially over the years that I've been in Sugar Hill, you've seen people as they get older and get sick and eventually die, and you've probably been there numerous times, and so they become somewhat like family.
Yeah.
And so that that's difficult, watching your neighbors die. And the other component of it is, the next time you go in the market, you're probably going to see some of the family
right.
or something. Whereas, in Manchester, you don't have that kind.
Because it's big enough.
You deal with the patient, and then you go home, and so you're always. I'm always on call, always on duty. If I'm north of the notch, I know I'm on duty.
Yeah. I never really thought about it like that. Yeah, you probably see people on their worst days, and especially if you have to show up more than once, there's a relationship or a bond that develops. So when what do you hold on to when you go through dealing with someone's death that in the community and that you've seen?
So that's an interesting question, and it's this we know on first responders, the job that we do and seeing people on their worst days and creating some level of bond wears on.
Yeah.
When I started in the fire service, we had a particular bad accident. It was a car full of teenagers. They'd been drinking. They were probably 16 years old, and one of the girls' head was literally through the windshield, and she was paralyzed. And I remember going back to the station. It was a call department similar to Sugar Hill, and getting everything back clean. And it really bothered me. I was young at that time. It was probably the worst thing I ever saw.
Yeah.
And, went outside, went around the back and vomited, and then came back.
Man.
And the chief said, what's the matter? And I said, that was, just a very young person, and no need for that, and all of that, And his comment was, suck it up. You're going to be in this business. You're going to have to learn to just suck it up. And fortunately, now we recognize that, taking care of our people emotionally is very important, and so now there's you would never say that, and there's peer groups. We're fortunate enough we have a chaplain on our department that's excellent, and also is a part of a crisis intervention team. The female that we have on the department is part of a crisis intervention team, and so my job is to recognize when my people are struggling, and then be able to get them help. And I've been at it a long time, and I can recognize that.
Yeah.
And have been able to get people straightened out through that. But that's a real important component of my job is watching out for my people. And it was the same with PEMI. With PEMI we deal with stuff that's many times we're carrying a deceased person could be for 3 or 4 hours to get them off the mountain, and then that has an effect on people. So.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I'm glad you brought that up. I was kind of thinking before we met today, should I talk about this or not? But I think that it's pretty clear. Definitely want to share my personal experience that I had with you before I even met you face to face. And it's exactly what you're just describing. You're showing up and you're helping people that you can recognize those signs that they need help, that it's not just a suck it up type of solution. I was in my first year of search and rescue and wasn't on PEMI search and rescue, but on another team. And the first mission I ever went on was called the easiest mission they ever had. And then the second mission that I went on a week later was known as the hardest mission that year. And I was not ready. I didn't really recognize what had happened until a couple months later when I, realized I wasn't sleeping, and, I was really very shaken by what had happened that night. And I was actually, it was advised that I get in touch with you. And so you and I had a phone conversation, and you didn't know who I was, but you knew enough about the work that you understood what I had been through without even needing any details. And you were able to connect me with some help. So I actually was connected with a therapist and worked through some acute PTSD. And within a couple of sessions, I was sleeping again. And I was able to stay on the team and still have a positive experience instead of it just being done and over with. So you show up for these organizations and you play a huge role in your community, but on an individual level, you're making this impact person to person. And I really appreciated that about you, and I was so happy when I finally got to meet you face to face.
So I don't know how you got connected to me
I don't know either.
But I'm glad you did. It's interesting in the search and rescue world where people call me unfortunately on a regular basis when something's bothering them and know that I have the resources and contacts to get them hopefully some help. So you're not alone. So but I'm glad it all worked out for you.
Oh yeah.
But I think again that's I think an important part of leadership and hopefully we're teaching that to our younger leaders is watching out for the people that you're working with, and ideally to be able to see signs that when they say I'm fine, but you know they're not. Is important to recognize so that you can help them. We had an unfortunate situation up at Cannon Mountain where a hiker slipped and fell and slid down 300 feet of ledge and ended up in a pool of water. And I knew exactly where he was, and Fish and Game was down south, and so I hiked up and found him, which was it was pretty devastating to see him in the condition that he was. And then when we needed to get him off the mountain, so we called search and rescue members to be able to do that. And one Fish and Game officer had arrived, and he and I put him and actually the medical examiner, we put him in the body bags because I didn't want my people to have to see.
Right.
But they had to walk right by where we were to be able to facilitate getting them off the mountain. And I could just see one of the women that when she walked by that it really was bothering her. And not unlike you, I followed up right away, and she said she was fine. And then I think 2 weeks later she called. She said, "I'm not fine."
Yep.
And I said, "Well, you can share with me why you're not fine or not. I can, it doesn't matter. I'll get you help." But she said, "No, I want to share." And she said, I came across this individual's name and his age, and he's the same age as I am. And I never thought that doing something hiking that I enjoy doing could result in my death. In fact, I never thought I could die, and so we were able to get her in touch with some help, and she got through it, and she's a very active member now again. But it was just something, and I think some of that just comes with years of experience.
Yes.
But I could just see in her face that this wasn't okay for her.
It reminds me of Levi.
Yes.
Who we lost around this time, actually, I think.
The conservation officer.
Yeah, with Fish and Game. And Levi had been on that mission with me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it was really, it hit me harder to lose him because he had been the anchor for me that night.
Okay.
And to find out after the fact that he had been struggling internally and that he wasn't able to get help was just so sad to me. And I think it took totally increased awareness for all of our teams, just to be watchful and making sure that we're talking about the resources that are available. But I'm sure that you see this in even fire rescue, that there's this persona that we feel like we have to put on of like being tough and being, you know, being like unaffected. And when somebody puts that front on, can you recognize that just as much as when somebody doesn't have it on?
Only because I've been doing it for so long. Yeah, you know, and able to say, you know, cut the baloney here.
Yeah.
Let's go talk. And you know, and usually they will, but not always. Depends upon the relationship that you might have with them. And you know, the importance of keeping things confidential. You know, so you know, we had a case with PIMI where we had one of the members was being a male member was being inappropriate with some of the female members, not during any official search and rescue missions, but because of that connection. And I was noticing that some of these females who were very active were no longer being active.
Oh, interesting.
And started to dig a little bit, and then finally somebody told me what was going on, and I'm like, really? And so I did some investigating, and the more I investigated, the more I learned that it was somewhat prevalent.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't a crime, but clearly inappropriate. You know, it would be like, you know, somebody asking you out for a date and you said no, but then they continue texting and emailing you and phoning you, and you keep repeatedly saying no. It was more in that type of thing.
But while I'm trying to volunteer and help my community.
Right. And so did some investigating and brought it to the board. We immediately suspended the individual and gave him the chance to state his side of the story. But you know, in that particular case, he decided he would resign. But in the process, what came out of all of that, I guess, was the fact that we created a culture where these women did feel comfortable bringing it in this case to my attention, knowing that they wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't just be pushed aside or they'd be ridiculed or whatever. And so again, that was all part of kind of team building. And fortunately those women came back, and hopefully that type of activity won't take place again.
Yeah, I love that it's so evident you're very protective of that psychological safety that's so needed in a team, especially when you're going out on missions like this. You need to know that it's a safe space to speak up, whatever the situation is. So in my case, even during a training, if I'm uncomfortable in a situation, like being able to say, hey, this is really scary to me, or like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And if you're not able to do that in a search and rescue environment, then you're going to get hurt.
Or you're going to quit.
Or you're going to you're going to get emotionally hurt.
And so, you know, again, I think it's important for the culture to be such that that you feel comfortable saying, geez, I'm not really comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And then for the leader, say, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, we'll work on that, but right now it's probably not the right time, and then have somebody else do it.
Right.
It's no different with the fire department. It's not, you know, every firefighter has their strengths and weaknesses. It's much easier, you know, with a department of 2021 to know what those are and to utilize their skills in the best way. But yes, as you get into a larger organization, it's not quite as easy.
Yeah. So in the case of a fire department of 20 people, what types of strengths do you see in different people? Like, I don't know about that stuff.
So, you know, certainly at a fire scene or an accident. We had a pretty significant accident yesterday afternoon. So you know those people that blood and guts don't bother them at all.
Okay.
And they're medical people for the most part, because that doesn't bother them. So you utilize them. You have other members that are very mechanically astute and understood how it was going to be to recover this vehicle and be able to get it removed on a wrecker. So it's knowing those skills, and then being able to, if you're fortunate enough to assign them to it. Same with the fire. You have those guys that are great interior guys. You have guys that can get your water from a puddle. And you have guys that can help manage the scene. And again, it's knowing what their strengths and what their weaknesses are allows you to deploy them in the best, and that works well for them because they feel comfortable, and they're gonna feel that they were a meaningful part of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your role as the chief? You're showing up on scene. Are you putting your focus on your people? Are you having to do focus split between your people and the scene? Like, what's happening?
Well, it's a combination, but I think, typically it's my job is just to oversee the entire scene. And paramount is safety of my own people first, but then the victims, and then also bystanders. So it's divided responsibility. In my department, I have officers, and so they know what component of it they need to do. In the accident, yesterday afternoon, I became a caregiver. So
to the patient.
To the patient.
Yeah.
I was the primary patient caregiver. So I was not in command. So somebody else knew that, and I wasn't going to walk away because this individual was very emotional and anxious. And she saw on my shirt that it said Chief, and so she kept calling me Chief, and we had developed some level of relationship, and she was very agitated. And so I had made the decision, my role today is just be there for her and help her. And,
so you had...
And then the others just pick up and do what has to be done without being told. So
nice.
All they had to know was, I'm with the patient. So,
yep.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So that all flows fairly easy, and that's, again, training and the fact that, with my department, they've been with us for a long time, so it just works very smoothly.
Yeah, it's a team.
Yeah.
You guys are used to playing together, so it's like on a soccer field.
Yeah. No.
If somebody moves over here, people kind of fill in the gaps.
Yeah. And as you mentioned team, I think team in an organization is very, very critical. And we try not to single out any one individual. Mm-hmm. So like with Pemmy after a search, sometimes, I think we had a woman give us 20 quarts of maple syrup that she wanted to go to the people that were carried her out.
Yeah.
And that was contrary to what we do. Because we had those 20 that day, but if it had been a different day, it would have been another 20.
Right.
And so what we did was we gave everybody at the meeting a raffle ticket, and we raffled off the 20 quarts of maple syrup. Again, we're a team and not a group of individuals.
Yeah, I gotcha. So you have really, you mentioned that you're in your 70s now, and as you look back over your life and you see all of the amazing experiences that you've had and the wisdom that you've gained from everything, you've really created a legacy in your life. And I'm curious if there was anything that you would do differently when you look back.
Oh, I certainly have made mistakes. over the years, and I guess if given the opportunity, especially when younger, may have done things somewhat different. I think my career choice was what I did from day one. My main business, I was a real estate developer.
How did you get into that?
Oh, I don't know. So I worked for a bank. My first real job was with a bank, and got into construction lending.
Okay.
And then we formed a subsidiary that did we did real estate appraisals, and we did all of the inspections of construction. But then, I managed any of the bank buildings being built, and then I don't know, somehow along the line, an opportunity came to us. It may have been property that was foreclosed on, and the best thing was to build it out. So they gave me that responsibility. It was a separate company, but we were owned at that time by the bank. So that's kind of got us started into development. And then when the banks got in trouble, I was fortunate enough I could buy the company out. And so I just continued doing real estate development. Made I've developed over $500 million of real estate in New Hampshire. Not all were successes.
Okay.
Fortunately made more good decisions that are bad.
Yeah.
Development is a form of gambling. People say,
yes.
Do you gamble? And I'm like, I did all my life in my business career. I don't now.
Yeah.
Because you're making decisions about developing 100 homes, thinking the economy is going to be one thing and interest rates will be what they are today, and it takes you a couple of years to get it up and running, and things can change.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you can find yourself, in trouble. So that was somewhat of a gamble, and that was my main business career was in real estate development.
Did you find excitement in risk?
I don't know. I found great pleasure in developing a project, finding the land, getting the approvals in place, and then all of a sudden show up and see 100 people working productively on your project, making good money, good quality jobs. That was always good to see. And then, going back after, a development that might have 50, 60 houses, and seeing the people in their yards enjoying it, and, that was rewarding. And, of course, there's, with that came some money, but yes.
Yes, of course. So would you change anything about that career path if you were to do it again?
No, I think I was pretty successful in that real estate development part. I did project management, where we would manage a very complex real estate project from soup to nuts. Mm-hmm. That was fun. It didn't have the risk, other than you had to make certain it all came in. My reputation was if I was involved, that you could be assured the project would come in under schedule, mm-hmm. Or ahead of schedule and under budget. And, fortunately I was able to do that. I was the project manager for the Franconia Safety Services building in Franconia. That was rewarding. I did the Twin Mountain Town Hall and Public Safety building. That was rewarding. I went from there down to North Conway and built their fire station, which is, that was an unbelievable project because of the quality. Everything was granite and brick and highest materials in a very prominent location, right at Schuyler Park, and we did that during COVID. Okay. In the middle of COVID, so that was I had a couple of other towns that wanted me to do work with them, and I'm like, I think I'm going to stop on a high. So that was the last.
It was your last one.
Did, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't regret. I have no interest in doing another one. So,
okay.
Yeah.
It must have been interesting to do that. Also, being a fire chief.
Well, it helps because
does it?
Yeah, it helps a lot because you can coach them along, and in some case, because we're building a building for 50 to 60 years of service, and you've got to get them to think 50 to 60 years, and the hard part sometimes is they have a hard time recognizing that. Well, we really don't need this today, but
right.
you will tomorrow.
Yes.
So, and then, but being able to live within the budget constraints and just getting to be able to help them make those decisions. Police was a little different because I was never a police officer, although I worked closely with them over time. But I learned it was kind of the same thing. I mean, It's like, yeah, you do. It's like, well, we only need one interview room. It's like, now you need, you're going to have a place for juveniles. I'm like, we'll use the same room. And it's like, yes, today, but we got to look at all of this and make these decisions, and so help them through it. And it was a learning process not only for me but for the communities. And in all cases, the projects were completed ahead of schedule and under budget. So,
what do you think has been one of the most important things you've learned about working with people and helping them transition through change?
Well, I think probably, to treat people the way you would like to be treated. I guess that's kind of the golden rule, but understanding in trying to get a feel for, what they're facing. My background and my experience and every other puts me, if I'm not careful, I can't relate to the new guy that just joined one of the teams. Yeah. And so, learning that you've got to understand where they're coming from, which is most likely a lot different than where you're coming from. Yeah.
How do you relate to young people today?
Better than I give my credit to.
Yeah.
So, I'm a leader in the fire service of pushing for recruitment and retaining members, and and teach that. And recruitment is in a non-career department, or in like PEMI, asking an existing member to bring somebody that they think would be a good member, so that they're kind of pre-qualified. Creating an environment. So if we just had a new fellow join our department, and he walked in, we gets introduced, and when he walked out, he had 18 new friends.
Nice.
They just that's our culture. They're immediately accepted. So that would be how you would like to be. I know when some organizations you join, nobody talks to you because you're the new guy, and you got to prove yourself and all of that. That doesn't work anymore. That doesn't work today. Just understanding how they think and what their motives are. I've come to learn. So when I was young and first joined the fire department, if the chief told you to jump, you did. I mean, you might say how high, but usually you would just jump. Today, if you ask a younger person to jump, you're going to ask you, well, why? And ask you a whole bunch of different questions.
And they may tell you no.
And they may tell you no, and unless you can give them a good good reason. But I can tell you, if you say because I told you so, they're probably not gonna come back.
That's
so
correct.
You've got to learn that. I don't know. You learn that they're so technologically tuned in that I remember years ago we were talking about propane gas. We had a propane leak, and I asked the guys, is propane heavier or lighter than air? And we just happened to have a younger fellow there, and he said, "Chief, it's lighter, and the specific gravity was whatever it was." I'm like, "How'd you know that? Did they teach you that?" He had gone to a course. He said, "No, I looked it up on my phone."
Yeah.
Oh, all right. This is a different, a different world.
It is a different world.
And so I think, but I think that's one of the problems the fire service is facing, is that we have leaders that haven't recognized that the younger generations are different. Not bad, just different. I'm a clone of my father. My kids are nothing like me.
Really?
Yeah. I'm hoping maybe my grandkids will be a little closer to me. But yeah, no, they're and not, they would, instead of, being involved with something, they want to be home with their kids. It's nothing, which is hard to say is wrong, and they always say you've always worked too hard and that type of thing. And they're happy to work to make enough money that they need, and then spend the rest of the time doing what they want. So
to be with their family,
be with their children. So maybe there's a lesson there for me to learn, but that was not how I grew up. I was always much more involved. Not that I neglected my family, but certainly, and even today, my pager goes off and it's a family outing. My wife will say, "Do you really have to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, I really have to go. And I'll be back." Type of thing. So yeah.
So, speaking of family outings, what do you like to do for fun?
Oh, I don't know. We go, I like to vacation. I like plays. So we have season tickets to the Ogunquit Playhouse.
Nice.
And we a couple of weeks ago, we spent a week down in Ogunquit on the beach right after Labor Day, when it's relatively quiet. I like to read. I read a lot.
What are you reading currently?
I know it's a book. I don't even know the name of it. It's a book that takes place in Maine, in a mill town where the mills went out. And so
that sounds very familiar. I'm from Maine, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's but it's where Hathaway's Shirts was.
Oh. Yeah.
Something falls. I don't know. It's like 650 pages.
Wow.
But it talks about, the people, the rich family that own the mills, and it's long. It's a longer book than.
Is it fiction?
It's fiction, but I suspect it's based on
historical fiction.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but or I like murder mysteries and. I don't know, easy stuff that I read before I go to, I usually read an hour before I go to bed.
Nice. Yeah. I like that you read. So. It's becoming a lost skill.
Yeah, I guess,
I think.
My grandkids read, they like to read, so. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
How many grandkids do you have?
So I have two that live 2 houses away from me, and I have 2 that live in Concord.
Oh.
Yeah. 3 girls and a boy.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you have 2 boys.
I actually have 3.
You have 3 boys?
Well, I have a stepson.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my son. Yeah.
Nice.
So I have, and they're all the same age, and they worked at a Y camp together, so there's some connection there.
Nice.
That took place prior to me marrying the one stepson's mom. Yeah.
Okay. So, do you guys all ski together?
We do. Yeah. My 2 biological boys are outstanding skiers.
Yeah.
My oldest was a coach at Carrabassett Valley, where Bodie Miller came out of. So the grandkids ski, and I ski with my son and my daughter-in-law. Yeah.
Do you hike? Do you do any other?
I do some hiking.
Yeah.
Yeah, just hiking more to stay in shape than anything. I don't want to get too far away from the trailhead, so I do Artist Bluff. Ball Mountain, that loop, because I can usually get myself out in 10 minutes no matter where I am. So
because of being on call all the time?
I'm always on call.
Yes, you have to be close to a vehicle, I guess.
Relatively close.
Yeah.
Except when we go, when we go on vacation, although through the moderns of technology, I can listen no matter where I am in the world. And the guys know it, and they're like, oh.
Yeah. I got a question for you. Have you ever had to be rescued?
Yeah, well, I rescued skiing.
Really?
Yeah. So, I got hurt pretty bad on New Year's Eve. It's been quite a while ago. On sweep. So sweep is when where the ski patrol's the last people to come down, make sure there's nobody on the trail or hurt or on the woods or whatever. And it gets dark fairly early on December 31st, snowing a little bit, and they were making a little bit of snow. And I was actually free skiing down to the trail that I had to patrol, and I got into some wet snow where they were making snow, and both skis stopped, and there was a steep part of the mountain, and I didn't, and I shattered my shoulder. Wait,
your skis stopped and you didn't?
Yeah.
So
I flew.
You flew?
Yeah. Tucked, because I didn't want to land on my chest.
Okay.
And landed on my shoulder.
Okay.
Fractured my shoulder.
Oh. What was it like after you landed? What do you remember?
Hurt. A lot of pain. And figuring, I don't know how I'm going to get back up and ski, because the last thing I wanted to do was come back down in a toboggan.
Yeah.
So we always keep one person up in case one of us gets hurt, or we find somebody and we need to have a toboggan brought down. So.
Do you have a radio or anything?
I have a radio.
Okay.
So, but the patroller whose trail that was, she was behind me, so she came to me immediately.
She saw it.
And then she called the person that was up at top, and they came down, brought me down in the toboggan.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to recover from that?
Long time, probably I don't know, not 6 months. I had to have my shoulder replaced and all of that, so then a lot of rehab.
So you part robot now?
Yeah, actually, if you ski patrol long enough, you get hurt. So both of my shoulders have been replaced.
Oh.
But
are they do you have problems with them? Are they amazing?
No, I don't know if they're amazing. I mean, I don't have the range of motion that I did prior, but I can do whatever I have to do.
Yeah.
And there's no pain or anything. It's just
that's amazing.
It is what it is. I do set off if I go on the airport with those fancy scanners, I usually set them off.
Yeah, I wonder what that looks like on the scanner, if there's just these big plates in there or something.
And they want you to get your hands up over your
and you
as
can't.
high. I can only go this high, and they're like, why? And you tell them, they're like, all right. Then it beeps, and
they think you're hiding something because you won't lift your hands up all the way, right?
Yeah, all right. So I guess that's I've never. Fortunately, hiking, I've never had to be rescued. But I don't know if I've ever gone a hike and not slipped. But 999 times out of 1,000, you catch yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But, so when people get hurt, it was their day. They slipped, and it's not usually because they weren't well prepared.
Right.
Or, it's just today was their day. Interestingly, our mountain rescues are down. And thinking about it, it's because of the dry weather, and so a lot of our calls are lower leg injuries because they slip on rock,
right?
And we're down, and I think that's the reason. And about a month ago, we had a heavy rain come through, and within an hour later, when the storm passed, we had 2 rescues, both related to people slipping on ledge. So, I guess the drought from that standpoint is good, but we do desperately need water.
It is good. Actually, it's probably Yeah, it is supposed to rain, but I probably in this drought season should have gone and finished my 48. I have one left.
Really? Yeah.
It's Owl's Head,
Yeah,
which
of
is the
course.
worst one.
Yeah.
But if there's like 6 brook crossings, and I tried to do it last summer, and I broke my foot crossing the brook.
Okay.
And I was already 8 miles in.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I am not calling someone. So I didn't realize I had broken it. I just knew it was hurting really bad. So I just, took a bunch of ibuprofen and headed back out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we would have been happy to come and get you.
I would have been so embarrassed. It's a long ways.
It is. But we have rescued our own people before. So
Yeah?
Yeah, not where they got hurt on a mission, but just hiking on themselves.
When they were out having fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I'm not going to be one of those people.
All right.
Oh, man. An hour has gone by. Can you believe that?
Goes by quick.
It does go by quick. I am just so grateful that you came on today.
Okay.
I don't know why you said yes.
I don't know. Sounded like I didn't really know what I was getting into. I think.
I don't think you did.
Yeah. But I enjoyed it.
Okay,
and I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and for the listeners maybe to get to know another side to a
Absolutely.
To a public safety official. There's more than just what maybe they see up front, and
that's exactly why I have my show.
Good.
So thank you for being here. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your stories and being open. It makes it worth listening to. Yeah. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. Have an amazing day.